Welcome to Construction Math. Today we're going to be looking at matrices. For bell work on your note taker, be thinking about a time you had to organize something. Please write it on your note taker and why you had to organize it. Teacher, pause the video, have the students share with their partner, and call on non-volunteers. I'll meet you back here in a couple minutes. Welcome back. When I was thinking this morning about organizing things, I remembered when I had to organize my closet so that I could find all my summer clothes together and all my winter clothes together. I needed to organize all my tax receipts before I filled out my income tax. I had to organize the kitchen drawers so that all of the silverware were in the same drawer. I hope you came up with some good ideas. The objectives for today, and please fill in the missing terms that are in red. We're going to define terminology, so we're going to just see if there's any new terms we need to talk about. Number 2, we're going to determine the name, the dimension, and another word for dimension is order, columns, rows, and elements of a matrix. 3, we're going to create a matrix, and 4, we're going to add and subtract matrices. The singular is matrix, the plural is matrices, so notice how the spelling changes. So fill in what vocabulary words are missing. So first thing we're going to do is a math check. So we need some basic skills on how to add and subtract. Don't use a calculator on these. Copy your problems onto your note taker. Compute the answer and then compare with your partner. And I'll meet you back here in a minute. Welcome back. Let's go ahead and go to the slate and look at these problems. All right, problem number 1. And we'll have it do this later. Remind us tomorrow. All right, problem number 1 said that we were going to take -3 plus 5 plus -2. All right, now there's 2 ways to do this. You can do it left to right because all operations are equally as important. So -3 plus 5, signs are different. We subtract and keep the sign of the larger, so we get 2 plus -2. They're the same number but opposites in sign, so we get the answer of 0. Or we could have decided to put the positives in one column and the negatives in one column. So we had a +5, we had a -3, and a -2. Let's add up the columns. So we get 5 on this side plus a -3 and a -2 is a -5. Again, they're opposites, same number, opposite in sign. The answer is still 0. Number 2 said to take 18 minus -7. In math, we don't really subtract. We always add the opposite. So we're going to keep the first number the same. We're going to change subtraction to addition, and we're going to keep the opposite of this number. The opposite of -7 is +7. Now we have a simple problem from arithmetic. 18 plus 7 is 25, and we get our answer. The third problem was a subtraction problem. Again, it said 0 minus -11. Again, when we subtract, we keep the first number the same, change subtraction to addition, take the opposite. 0 plus 11 is 11. How'd you do? I hope you did well. Pause the video if students have questions, and we'll be back in just a second to go to the PowerPoint. All right, welcome back. Okay, we checked our answers. We got the same answers. And here we go. All right, the vocabulary word today is matrices. So what I need you to do is draw a picture, define it in your own words, and write a meaningful sentence. The definition, it's a table of numbers. It's a rectangular array of numbers. And that symbol, the 2 brackets, are the symbol for a matrix. Fill in the connection or new information, or you may fill this in as we go through the lesson. Pause the video, teacher, have the students share their meaningful sentence and call on non-volunteers. Welcome back. Some new information. When we label a matrix or name a matrix, it's with capital letters that are bolded. On your paper, when you write it, as long as it's a capital letter, it's okay with me. But when I have it typed, I'm going to try to always remember to bold it. Second thing we need to know, the size or dimension of a matrix. It's the number of rows by the number of columns. So we would say it's a 3 by 2. I know that looks like a capital X or a large multiplication sign, but when we're talking about matrices, we use the word by. So it's a 3 by 2 matrix. It's a 1 by 4 matrix. And each entry is called an element. So when we look at this particular matrix, the matrix name is A, or capital A. Every element in there, 4 is an element, -2 is an element, 0 is an element, 5 is an element, 2 is an element, and so is 9. They are all just different elements of this matrix. We have column 1, we have column 2. Columns go up and down, just like a column that supports the roof of like a patio area. Columns go up and down, rows go side to side. So we 4, 0, and 2 are in column 1. -2, 5, and 9 are column 2. In row 1 we have 4 and -2. In row 2 we have 0 and 5. In row 3 we have 2 and 9. An element is labeled by a lowercase number. So since the matrix was a capital A, each element is a lowercase a, or a small a. And we say A3, 2, that's a little subscript. It means find the element in row 3, column 2. So that would be 9. If I asked what was the element in A sub 1, 2, we'd go to row 1, column 2, and it would be -2. Teacher, pause the video if students need to add any information to their note taker. Welcome back. Now I need you to create a memory strategy to help you remember that it's always rows by columns. Work with a partner and come up with a way that you're going to remember it's rows by columns, and be ready to share when your teacher calls on you. Pause the video until this is complete. Welcome back. Now I've been doing this a long time and working with matrices, and I remember as rows by columns by the idea of I used to drink RC Cola. So it's R for rows and C for columns. Also my husband's initials are R and C. Helps me remember. All right, now on your slates or on a piece of paper, here's my matrix. Matrix B is -1, 4, 0, 9, -2, -5, 8, and -7. I want you to state the dimension. I want you to state the name of the matrix and name the element that's B sub 1, 3. Teacher, pause the video, call on non-volunteers, and we'll meet you back here in a minute. Welcome back. Let's see how you did. The matrix's dimension is 2 by 4. It has 2 rows by 4 columns. The name of the matrix is B, capital letter, bolded. All right. The name of the element in B1, 3, it means go to row 1, column 3, and it's the number 0. How'd you do? So let's check. Fill in any of the missing numbers in your matrix on your note taker, and teacher, when ready, start the video again. So, thumbs up or thumbs down? Could the name of this matrix be lowercase n? Signal to your teacher. Teacher, pause the video. Have everybody signal with their eyes closed, yes or no, and I'll meet you back here in a couple of minutes. Welcome back. No, it couldn't be. All labels, all names of matrices must be in capital letters, so it would have to be capital N. Let's try another thumbs up and down. The dimension of that matrix is a 3 by 2. Teacher, have the students signal to you thumbs up or thumbs down. Let's check. Yes, there were 3 rows and 2 columns in my matrix. So that was a yes. All right. Is n sub 3, 1, that element, equal to -1? Teacher, have the students show you thumbs up or thumbs down. Let's check. No. The element in row 3, column 1 is a positive one, not a negative one. So that was a no. Now, here's some information for you. We're going to start to do taking a real life situation and we're going to make it into a matrix. So here's a construction. Site manager is ordering supplies. He orders 4 claw hammers for the site and for site 1 and 6 claw hammers for site 2. He also orders 18 ball peen hammers for site 1 and 20 for site 2. We're going to learn to construct a matrix, making a matrix for this information, and we're going to label, since it's a real life problem and these are not naked numbers, then we are going to label the rows and the columns for clarity. Right, so fill in the missing numbers on your note taker, and I'll meet you back here in a minute. Welcome back. First thing is, go through that information and underline what was important. Pause the video until students have done that. What was the important information? Welcome back. So the important information I thought was the 4 claw hammers for site 1 and 6 for site 2. I also think the 18 ball peen hammers for site 1 and 20 for site 2 were the important pieces of information. I hope that's what you underline. It didn't really matter that he was the construction site manager. It could have been the owner. It really didn't matter. So we're going to make a matrix. So what I did was I decided to put in the rows the 2 kinds of hammers, the claw hammer and the ball peen hammer. And in the columns, I put site 1 and site 2, and then I filled in the numbers. So the claw hammers for site 1 were 4, the claw hammers for site 2 were 6, the ball peen hammers for site 1 were 18, the ball peen hammers for site 2 were 20. You could have interchanged the rows and the columns. So let's go real quickly to our slate, and I'll show you what I mean. Get to the right page so I have the numbers. So what we could have done was we still would draw a matrix. And this, instead of being the hammers, I'm going to put this as site 1 and this is site 2. This would be claw hammers. These would be ball peen hammers. And I still looked through the information. It said we ordered 4 claw hammers for site 1. We ordered 6 for site 2. We ordered 18 ball peen hammers for site 1 and 20 for site 2. Notice by labeling them, either answer is going to be perfectly okay. The matrix is still the same size. It's still 2 rows by 2 columns in this case because it's what we call a square matrix. It's square because the number of rows equal to the number of columns. Otherwise, if it's not a square, it's a rectangular matrix. So either way that you want to write the matrix is fine. So pause the video until students have gotten the information onto their note taker, and I'll meet you back here in a minute. Welcome back. Let's go back to our PowerPoint, and you try. What I need you to do is, we have plier sales for large corporations during 2015. Would you please write for me a matrix that shows the number of craftsmen slip joint, pull grip, and needle nose, the same for NWSs, the same for snap-ons, and the same for channel locks. Teacher, pause the videos until students have made their matrix. Make sure that they have labeled the matrix, labeled the rows, labeled the columns. And you certainly may abbreviate. Slip joint could be SJ if you'd like it to be. So pause the video and I'll meet you back here in a few minutes. Welcome back. Have the students compare with their partner, and we'll check the answer in just a minute. Okay, let's see. I decided to put the company's names on the rows, and the columns were the type of plier. Now, other answers are possible. You could have put slip joint, pull grip, and needle nose on the rows and made the columns craftsman, NWSs, snap-ons, and channel love. Your choice. Okay. Now, to add or subtract matrices, please add these two missing terms to your note taker. To add or subtract matrices, they have to have the same dimension or be the same size. To add or subtract them, we add or subtract the corresponding elements. So I've got an example, but let me go to my slate and give you a step through on how to do this. So let me make the first matrix. The first matrix said the top row was -2, 5. The second row was 3, -1. And I wanted to add to that my matrix -3, 4. And that was the top row, and -3, 5 was the second row. Now, in order to add them, I need to make sure they're the same size. So this had 2 rows by 2 columns. This guy had 2 rows by 2 columns. They're the same size or dimensions, so that means we can add them. So the answer is going to be exactly the same size also. It's going to have 2 rows and 2 columns. So what we do is this is in row 1, column 1. We add it to row 1, column 1 of the second matrix. -2 plus -3 is -5. Now this guy would be 5. He's in row 1, column 2. We're going to add him to row 1, column 2 of the second matrix. So 5 plus 4 is 9. We go to row 2, column 1, and we add it to row 2, column 1 of the second matrix. 3 plus -3 gives me 0. And then I'm going to do this one. Let's see what shape I can make. Let's make a long rectangle. -1 plus +5. These two get added, and I get +4. And there's my matrix answer. So it's really simple once you understand it. Matrices were constructed by man many years before we even did Excel, back in the 1600s and 1700s. So let's look at let's go ahead and clear this off and go back to our PowerPoint. And let's see how you can do. So on your note taker, fill in any missing numbers and add or subtract these matrices. Teacher, pause the video and we'll meet you back here in a couple of minutes. Welcome back. Let's see. The first one, I have a mistake. I did not have a mistake. I didn't read the sign. So notice number 1 was subtraction. So let's go ahead and go to our PowerPoint so I can explain to our slate so I can explain an easy way to do this so that you didn't make the mental mistake I did. So let's get our first matrix down. My first matrix was -5, -9. My second row was 2, 6. My third row was 6, 5. And I want to subtract my second matrix. And the top row was -9, 4. The second row was 7, -3. And the third row was 9, 0. Now, when I subtract, I remember way back into Algebra 1, 2, my algebra teacher taught me that there's no such thing as subtraction. We always add the opposite. So I'm going to change this subtraction sign into addition. And I'm going to go into this matrix and change everybody's sign. If he's negative, I change him to positive. If he's positive, I change him to negative. And then now all I have to do is add the corresponding elements. So I'm going to add -5 plus 9 gives me 4. -9 plus -4 gives me -13. 2 plus -7 gives me -5. 6 plus 3 gives me 9. 6 plus -9 gives me -3. And 5 plus 0 gives me 5. That's so much easier for me to be able to do it. Number 2 had only 1 row. It was 7, -1, 0, and -5. And I wanted to add to that the matrix -9, 3, -1, and -9. Now this is a 1 by 4 matrix. This guy's a 1 by 4 matrix, so I can add them. So 7 plus negative 9 gave me negative 2. Negative 1 plus 3 gave me positive 2. 0 plus negative 1 gave me negative 1. And negative 5 plus negative 9 gives me negative 14. Because there's so much computation, please know that when I'm grading your tests, if you just miss, say, this element, I'd only take off 1 point, not the whole thing. Now, the last matrix looked really nasty. The last ones that we had was 19, 23, we had negative 40, we had 1/2, we had negative 92, and we had 3/5. Some pretty weird numbers. And I wanted to add to that 4/9. I wanted negative 5/6. I want negative 13. Negative 6.4. The last row is negative 1/3 and 0. Please don't freak out because you have fractions in here. Let's see the size of this matrix. The size or dimension of this matrix is a 2 rows and 1, 2, 3 columns. So it's a 2 by 3. This guy has 1, 2, 3 rows by 2 columns. They're not the same size, so this addition is not possible. You can't do it because they're not the same size. Because if you added 19 and 4/9 and then you added 23 and negative 5/6, you have nothing for the negative 40 to add to. So be very careful to check to make sure that your dimensions are the same before you try to add or subtract them. All right, let's clear this off. Let's go back to our PowerPoint. There we go. Our answers are correct now. So now let's look at the next one. The manager of 2 hardware parts stores wants to maintain inventory. So we have different 2 by 4s, 4 by 6s, 6 by 8s. We have some treated and some untreated. So the first thing you're going to need to do is create an inventory matrix to combine these two. So what we're going to do is you're going to have 2 separate matrices. One's going to represent store 1, one's going to represent store 2. So create a matrix, pause the video, and create your 2 matrices, and I'll meet you back here in a minute. Now that your 2 matrices are completed, compare with your partner, and then add the 2 matrices together to complete the inventory matrix. So pause the video, and I'll meet you back here in a minute. Let's check. Welcome back. Let's check. So I made store 1. I put the 2 by 4s, the 4 by 6s, and the 6 by 8s as rows, the treated and the untreated as columns. You could have done it in reverse order, but make sure that after you've done it that you've added them and that you've come out with, no matter which way you made your matrix, that the treated 2 by 4s, there were 140. The untreated 2 by 4s, there were 240. The treated 4 by 6s were 36. The untreated were 38. The treated 6 by 8s were 63, and the untreated by 47. On their test, I'm going to be looking that you label columns and rows, and in this case, you also put the title 1 store 1, 1 store 2, and I either could have the total or the inventory. Teacher, pause the video until students have checked, and I'll meet you back here in a minute. Welcome back. On your note taker, explain everything that you've learned today, or as much as you can, about matrices in 140 characters or less. Pause the video, have students complete that, have them share with their partner, and then teacher call on non-volunteers. I'll see you back here next time for another construction math lesson.